good evening, everyone. Thank you. And I welcome you all for being with us here on this Monday evening in this session with us. Thank you so much. It really means a lot. So, today is a very special evening in various ways. It's very special for Ceekr, it's very special for me, and it's very special for people living in Bengaluru. So, I'll tell you how. We've been hosting these Monday sessions at evening 7 o'clock within the community of Seeker for almost about 5, 6 months now. But this is the first time that we have opened the session for a community which is outside of Seeker. Like anybody is welcome to attend the session because we believe in spreading mind literacy. We wanted more minds to be literate and understand their own minds. So this is very special for Seeker because we are expanding. This is very special for me because I'm hosting it. I'm talking right in front of you. For people of Bengaluru, it poured. It rained here this evening. Had I not been in this session, I would have been down, out, and getting soaked up in the rain. So nature is happy. People here in Bengaluru are happy. So, and I'm happy. That was on a lighter note. But the topic of today is not light. It's about overwhelm. So, our intention is not to make you overwhelmed or to be flooded or burdened by this topic, but to let you be at ease with what we consider as overwhelm. I will be asking questions here from Ankur, and Ankur is going to take us through this concept of overwhelm, the understanding of overwhelm from the perspective of mind mastery. So, understanding overwhelm, and what are we going to discuss in this today's session of 1 hour is what is overwhelm, understanding it from the perspective of the dictionary meaning of it. What are the symptoms and how common is it? Are there kinds of overwhelm? Let us understand that. Why does it happen? And what are the consequences and solution? So what we are here for is to understand why does it happen. We all know the kinds or the symptoms, but why does it happen is most important for us. Let's understand overwhelm from different perspectives in the sense, what happens as a state of being. There's one definition that tells us that it's a state of being. You know, we can also refer to the state of being as the mind. It's not me or it's not you or it's not a permanent state of mind, but it's a state of being right now. What am I going through? And that right now, my state of being senses that I'm being flooded. The being is being flooded or overpowered by something. And that could be through various means. Or we are unable to cope up. That being is unable to cope up or manage the demands or the pressures that one is facing. So that's also coming from the experience point of view, which is an overwhelm. The interesting part is that there could be certain beings or some people who may not even experience that, who may not even know that they are being overwhelmed because they don't know how to react. That's such a strong emotion. There's no reaction, and they don't know. They don't even know that they don't even know that they'd have overwhelm. So that's a very tricky state. And I'm sorry, I think I don't know if we are putting them in a dangerous spot by letting them know that you are feeling overwhelmed. Now, how does it look like? What would be the symptoms of it? How would you feel? How would you experience? What would be your emotions when you are overwhelmed? It's either you're forgetting things, either you are feeling it in the physical body by stomach ache or butterflies in the stomach or headache or any other pains and aches in the body. You've stopped enjoying those activities that you were interested in. Those are the signs to look for that you might be overwhelmed, or there are racing thoughts, or you're not feeling positive. Is there difficulty in sleeping? There's confusion. That's too much, feeling of too much. You're unable to focus. You're unable to concentrate. So many times you've heard I don't have energy. How many people experience that I'm low on energy? So this could also be a withdrawal. We might step out of the tasks. We might start withdrawing ourselves from certain tasks because we are overwhelmed. We are not able to cope up with the pressure. Now, there are different types of overwhelm that we've come across through various research engines. That there's emotional overwhelm, information, decision, physical, relationship, work, and environmental. This is all what we know and what is typed, what is there as a data, as an information. What we are here for is what we don't know. And Ankur is now going to take us through. Do you want me to explain in one liner, Ankur, what are these as per the definition, or would you like to just take over and tell us what are these overwhelms? Do they really happen?
Hi everyone.
Put you on spotlight.
When Saima asked me to come and talk about overwhelm, she shared some research with me. And there's this mental health institute in the US. She shared a research paper with me. And, you know, I work with people in the mind space, but I hadn't read this research before. And I was surprised. They did a research covering 3,000 subjects, ages between 18 and 45. And 50% of those people complained of feeling overwhelmed often. I was shocked. Even though I work in this area, I guess my work is not statistical in nature in terms of data collection, etc. Right? So I was taken aback, and then I looked at some other stuff voluntarily, and it kept coming up. So I was quite surprised, and immediately, I said, yes, we must do this session. And then when we started to look at it, Saima showed me these types of overwhelms they found. And suddenly it started appearing to me how important this session could be, because all these types actually are telling you that what is the reason for overwhelm. It's telling you that, oh, somebody had a financial problem, so he got overwhelmed. Somebody got overwhelmed because they couldn't handle the job situation. Somebody got overwhelmed because the academic load was too high, right? But these are the causes. This is not the real overwhelm, right? Real overwhelm takes place where? Inside our mind, right? Just like physically, I remember reading this article that there was a fire in the Notre Dame, and the the fireman. It was such a fire, the fireman got overwhelmed. Then there was some terrorist attack, and the police got overwhelmed. So overwhelmed means when you get thrown into a situation or you get faced by a situation which you don't know how to respond to. And that takes place inside our mind. So there's a generic thing. I'll use the whiteboard. So the generic thing, which at least the mind mastery people are all familiar with, is that there's this 24/7 exchange which happens between us and the world. It starts at the time of our birth, and it is there till the time we die. So the environment throws something at us, it enters us, we process it, and we respond back, right? So this is the environment acting, this is what we get, then we throw it back, and this is our response. And then, so if you look at it, you can say, okay, so what are the options? One option is I have correct response. The other option is I have incorrect response. Third option is overwhelm. That means I, I get confused. I'm not able to process. Another way to look at this is that the environment sends data. This is my mind. From my sense organs, I receive the data. I'm supposed to give an output, doesn't matter right or wrong, but I'm not able to give this output, right? So the real overwhelm is not the life situation. It's not the relationship. It is not the finances. The real reason for overwhelm is what's happening inside, right? And the fact that I'm not able to respond. So if you look at it from this point of view, overwhelm has two simple characteristics. One, that I want to respond, but I can't. And the second is I get some form of confusion or freeze, right? So that is why I am not able to respond. Overwhelm will not happen to you. If somebody is yelling on the road and you think that he's a madman, you don't want to, no matter what somebody does, if you don't want to respond, there's not going to be an overwhelm. So what happens in uh, overwhelm? Biologically, our body says don't respond. It shuts down, right? And then overwhelm. So similarly, overwhelm can be something that happens momentarily. It can happen for a few days. Or if you keep having these smaller episodes of overwhelm, you can reach a stage of overwhelm, which we can refer to sometimes as burnout, etc. And that leads to other complicated symptoms, right? So it can exhibit itself earlier in terms of anxiety, or it can be associated with panic. It can have physiological issues. So this is kind of like the context of overwhelm, right? So have I been able to explain what I think overwhelm is? Saima, does that answer your question?
Yeah, so what I understood is that what you're saying is that it's all the external stimuli and whatever has been forced upon us internally, we don't know how to either process it or we don't know, it's an unknown domain for us and we want to respond to it. Is that so, Ankur? Because I think it's our ability or our desire to respond to it and we don't know, causes overwhelm,
Yeah.
or else we'll back out, or else we'll say we'll refuse,
Just
we'll
freeze.
shut down. Yeah, just
We
freeze.
yeah. Yeah.
So, so okay, there's a question, Vasudha. Do you want to? How is it different from depression, desire to respond?
So depression could be a long-term consequence also of feeling overwhelmed. Then you totally give up, right? Your rule mind breaks. But in the beginning, overwhelm can also be episodic,
Hmm.
right? It can be once at a time, then it can happen again, then it can happen again. Sometimes it could last for a few days. Now, if it happens at the wrong moment or in the wrong situation, you could have long-term price to pay, right? Academic overwhelm before exams. So a lot of good students go through that, right? And
Right.
exams get spoiled. Heaven help you if it's your board exam or some crucial entrance exam, right?
But the desire to respond is in both situations, is it?
Yeah. So see, if there is no desire to respond, then it's not an overwhelm. Then you don't want to. You look the other way. Overwhelm will happen only when there is a desire, but you can't. So you freeze. Sometimes, for instance, I don't know if you've noticed in small children, right? They are happy, they are playing. You have told them not to do something. right? And they do it by mistake or something, and then suddenly and they get confused, right? And because their mind is not processing all the data together, they can't simply tell you something happened and they freeze. So that's a momentary episodic overwhelm also. Yeah.
So there's another question from Ajit. What's the difference between anxiety and overwhelm? Amrita, I'll come back to you.
Yeah. So Ajit, anxiety is a physiological phenomena which takes place when you analyze too much on your fear or greed symptoms, the desire mind that we study about, right? Those factors, right? And that increases physiologically. So it can lead to irritation, etc. It can lead to, it leads to higher breath rate, higher heart rate. Yeah, it could give you sleeplessness, but it doesn't mean you will not respond within it, right? So anxiety and overwhelm can go together. They can be separate also.
So, Ankur,
Okay, thanks, Ankur. Just one more question on that. Could there be a positive side of being overwhelmed also, for example, with joy? I'm not sure if I saw that on the
So
slide that was being showed
that's
earlier.
okay. You could be overwhelmed with joy, but
Yeah.
that is temporarily, na? It's not causing you any physiological damage.
So we are saying overwhelm only when it's on a negative connotation, then it is overwhelmed. Otherwise, it could be a not necessarily overwhelmed. If it's a joyous overwhelmed.
We are not here for the sake of the word overwhelm, right? There can be positive use of poison as well. I think the topic is more around the thing which requires help or needing cure.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, Rashmi, if I cut you off.
yeah, I just wanted to add to what Ankur was saying, that in anxiety, we don't necessarily not know what to do. We know what is to be done. Maybe we know the response, but still there is anxiousness. But in overwhelm, as Ankur said, I think the most important point is we don't know how to respond in that situation.
Yes.
That's what I just wanted to.
Okay, thanks.
And can we also say, Ankur, that overwhelm can also be the beginning stage of, long lasting? Then if it persists and if it frequently happens, that it might result to anxiety and stress. But initially, overwhelm.
I think, Saima, overwhelm is a phenomenon. It
Okay.
happens. It can last for a set period of time, right? It is this thing about not being able to respond where you want to, just freezing, right? And then it could just multiply, then it takes different forms and shapes.
Right.
Right.
Thanks. Sorry, Amrita, you can ask your question. Someone that raised your hand.
So, hi, Ankur, I think you answered what I wanted to ask. So, basically, now you're saying that when we are thrown with a situation, and if we are not able to respond, if we freeze, that is overwhelmed. You also said that we respond either the correct response or the wrong response or overwhelm.
So when you respond right or wrong, it's not overwhelm, right?
It's not, it's a response.
It's a response.
So overwhelm is basically when we freeze.
Overwhelm is when you're overcome. You just don't know what to do.
Come with the situation or overcome with
Yes.
what.
So emotional overcome. So we can discuss the how overcome really happens, the technicality of it.
And maybe the next step to overwhelm is anxiety or kind of stress.
It can take many. It can take many shapes after that, right?
Okay. So this idea that I don't know how to deal with the situation, so then that causes.
Yeah, then that can become a mental thing also, that I can't. So you could make a rule like that. You could make a belief. You could set in a fear. Also, that could happen subsequently.
Yeah, I've seen people who are overwhelmed. They don't start, and after some time, since they don't start, they give it up.
Dr. Kamal also has a point over here. She says, to my understanding, overwhelm is a result of a stimulus, and anxiety can exist in the absence of a stimulus too.
Yeah, that's very well said. So, the head we were making, we said something comes from outside, right? And then you do want to respond to it, but you can't. So anxiety could be something that you have underlying before, for those of you who've already been through the system of mind, you could have seen exactly how anxiety happens, right?
Also, I think one thing is also occurring to me is, Ankur, what we've also studied in my mastery is that anxiety also results from, over imagining, over visualizing. Like we are stuck in that loop of
So
putting
overwhelm
ourselves into that situation.
overwhelm can also happen because of that, right? Overwhelm can also happen because of that. So that's not
Because
the
of
So,
over imagining. Okay.
course.
so I have a question, Ankurji.
Hmm.
Whether anxiety, whether depression, whether we are talking about overwhelm, there has to be an external stimuli. Somewhere I'm still not able to digest the fact, because anxiety means chinta, and uh, it will happen only when there is something which is in the environment which you are not comfortable with.
It
Overwhelm
it doesn't
probably
happen.
the,
It doesn't happen like that. Take a simple example. When was the last time you were trying to meditate and suddenly something irritated you, which is not outside, which is a bad memory, and you got scared and your meditation broke, right?
Mm,
That
mhm.
happens, right? No, there's no external stimuli. You just remember something, right?
Right.
Anxiety is planted inside you. So I think let's uh, move ahead. Saima's got a big agenda.
Uh-huh. So, okay, I'll just go back to the slide sharing, and this is what you were
Yeah, so we
explaining,
already
right?
covered this.
We've covered this, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if anybody wants to take a picture, or if you're free, you're welcome to do that. And that's what was explained by Ankur. Okay, so before we move forward here, Ankur, do you want to talk about how do we deal with it now? Like, we have an understanding. Now just imagine there's an information, too much of information, and we experience it inside our community in the course. Our immersive program candidates, they have been saying, oh, we are overwhelmed, overwhelmed because there's too much of information. And that's when it struck me that, let's talk about overwhelm. Let's make it easy for them. If it's too much of information, what do we do? Like, let's just consider our own inner community for that matter. How do we make it easier, and how do they process the information that it's easier for them to undergo the course?
Yeah. So that's before we get into how to solve for overwhelm, let's try and understand what is actually happening inside. Why are we
Okay.
not able to do? What is the actual phenomena? What is the
Okay.
scientific basis of overwhelm? Okay. So
Understanding the why.
understanding the why, and then
Yeah.
then
Okay.
we can talk about solving for it, right? So typically, as we've studied, there are everything we do, we use two resources: attention, just 1 second, sorry, attention and energy. Even for decision making, even for deciding what we do next, and even for taking that action. Because what are we saying? We're saying stimuli is coming, we are deciding what to do, and then we are deciding. So if we are not able to decide, or if we're not able to do, now both these things, both the deciding and the doing, takes energy and attention. What the recently we published also research and otherwise also well-known fact is that attention and energy is spent in three formats. One is your physical function. So all your physiological functions like your heartbeat, breath rate, digestion, all the stuff that the body does to stay alive. So physiologically, we are spending energy. Emotionally, we are spending energy. And cognitively, we are spending energy. Right? So there has to be a balance of these to make a decision, right? Now, when the cognitive energy expenditure, cognitive attention and energy on cognition is high or sufficient, there can be no overwhelm, right? Because you will take some decision, whether it's correct or wrong, you'll move on. When the amount of energy spent on emotions gets high, then what happens is that even your physiological energy expenditure increases. Those of you who have studied CAS, you already know that, when we feel sad, our pH balance changes. When we get angry, our heart rate rises, our breath rate rises. Our physiology has to do much more work. Our hypothalamus sends different kind of signals, right? So the emotional high expenditure leads to high physiological load on the body. Now, till some time when you are emotional, then you can get angry, you can take a erratic decision. So even then, again, your decision can be unpredictable. Your action can be over pleasant or not pleasant at all or incorrect, but there will be action. But if your emotion suddenly becomes extremely high, right? Now, what happens when this emotion becomes extremely high? It could be overfeeling or overthinking. Too much at stake, you feel, right? So, to overfeeling or overthinking, the physiological load will become so high suddenly, temporarily, you will get frozen. For those of you who have studied the choice making mind, you would know that all the stimuli comes to the mixer, right? So all the various stimuli in the mind, they get accumulated one place, and then one final stimuli comes out, which leads to decision making. Now, when that one final stimuli is not made, because there is so much physiological activity, and you get frozen. So it's a state of confusion that arises, and it arises due to the attention energy balance. So this is one way to understand why overwhelm happens, because of a total and sudden shift in the attention energy balance within our mind and body. Second reason, right? No matter how complicated a problem is, no matter how sudden it is, but if you are familiar with it, if you can make sense of it, right? So try and understand it. Right now, I just told you the energy attention answer. Now let's try and understand the common sense answer. So no matter what you are faced with in life, how badly surprised you are, right? But if you know, if you can make sense of it, right? If you can make sense of it, your cognition continues to work, right? If you can't make sense of it, you're shocked or you're surprised, your cognition shuts down. It's like an unfamiliar thing. So remember, we study the mental maps through cognitive attentions and through sustainable cognitive attention. So let us say something happens that doesn't fit in anywhere in your mental map, right? So then also you can be suddenly surprised and your cognition will not work, right? So then wherever there is zero cognition, there's an emotional or otherwise totally physiological response. So both these situations will lead to the why. And here, I don't think it's fair because here we've invited people who haven't studied the CMM to get into the CMM things that we can take in the class, right? To show you how each part of the CMM leads to different kinds of overwhelm. But for right now, you should know that there are two big reasons. One is that you have no systemic understanding of what to do. You have no mental map for the situation, and or the suddenly your caste changes, your attention energy balance goes away from cognition, and even from emotion, it goes totally to physiological. So these two situations are required for overwhelm, right? So this, if you know these two whys, then basis this, we can come up with how to solve for it, right?
Okay. So before we move forward, Ankur, can I also, I think, is it also possible, what you're saying is that we don't know. It's out of our knowing
Yes.
domain, right? It's a fairly new thing for us, which we are unable to cope. Do you also think that it could also occur from a recurring pattern? Like, what if we have
But
already
you continue
experienced it in
not
the
to know.
past?
Do you continue not to know,
Okay.
right?
But what if somebody has already experienced an overwhelm? You've
Yeah.
come out and you think, oh my God, in the past also this has happened with me, and okay, so
So
you're saying,
let me give you two examples. So for instance, there is you have let's say your loved one does something totally unacceptable. You trusted them. So there was a rule in your mind. And somebody does something which is 100% contrarian to that rule. And that rule was the whole truth of your life. You, for momentary also, you get frozen, right? You could
right,
be overwhelmed, right? So that could happen once. But then there could be certain other things that can happen episodically, and you don't develop the maturity or the mental map how to deal with it. So every time you'll be overwhelmed. As long as that shuts down your cognition, it changes your attention spectrum.
right. And I think Vasudha had a question.
Yeah, we'll take a
Is it
question.
applicable to any kind of trauma?
Yeah, it can absolutely. It can be the cause and consequence of a trauma. It can lead to traumas as well. It can be caused by traumas.
So, when we are talking about trauma, also, does that also mean that it's processing because of that some overload or a
Yeah,
situation which was
absolutely.
unhandled?
Anything that is a trauma which triggers the attention physiology cognition load to shift, right? To a large extent, that thing that you haven't learned how to process.
All right. So, is it overwhelming for people? Because it's a don't know domain. I hope you're not flooding, Ankur is not flooding you with information that we don't know. Awesome. So, let's talk about then. Are we ready for how do we deal with it, Ankur? Is it the right time?
Yeah,
Then,
sure.
there are suddenly interesting, like, short term. Like I do, and I'm very close to my own community. I think I'm biased right now because our immersive program community of those people, they're like, oh, there's so much, there's so much, there's so much. So let's make it easy for them. What is the quick fix remedy and what is the long term permanent remedy for them?
So I think let us say that we can put it in three terms: quick fix, remedy. We can put it in some medium term remedy, and then the permanent remedy, right?
Okay.
So there are three hacks. The first hack is to move away from when we study the difference between observation and attention. right? Attention, energy balancing. So there are many techniques of attention energy balancing that we also teach, right? Which work immediately, right? So for instance, if you ever get indecisive, stopping your breath, changing your breath, constant focusing on your breath. So there are techniques we teach about which situation do you use the left nostril, right nostril. Appropriate, it'll take too much time here, but we can try also any kind of breathing technique where you regulate, you take your breath in, you hold it for at count of 3 and get it out, right? This immediately does the physiological release. Yeah. So this simple technique like this.
Okay, Ankur, can we do it? Can we practice it right now with everyone? Yeah. Okay. So are you saying that breathe in for 3 times and then breathe out and it's through the nostrils?
Just breathe in, take a normal breath and hold it for a count of 1, 2, 3 in your mind and then release it. Just do this. We can do it maybe
Okay, so
5.
so I think we each everybody can practice it, do it, and let's just know quick. If anybody is feeling overwhelmed, let's see if it works right now. So we can all close our eye.
Yeah.
Okay, so before that, I think we can just be straight, our spine is erect. Take your body, let your body go loose. Close your eyes, your shoulders are relaxed. Let's be mindful here, let's be conscious here that we are doing this practice for a reason, for a purpose, to make ourselves come out of the overwhelm. So we can breathe in and breathe out. And we can also make sure that with every breath out, we are releasing any obstruction, the overwhelm, the not knowing. Let go of the fear of unknown. You may now gently open your eyes. Thank you.
So in the interest of my guru's science that they have taught us and the Upanishads and the Paravidya we talk about, I want to make one comment. It is absolutely lovely to hear Saima say that let go of the and these affirmations absolutely work, right? So I'm all for it. You should use it. But outside of that, I want to tell you that it is categorically mentioned in the scriptures that even if you don't make these affirmations, just the scientific act of shifting your attention from those portions of the mind which are overactive and driving your physiology and emotions and stopping your breath immediately stops the physiological overactivity, the thinking, extra thinking stimulus, and that itself is enough. So that's just a scientific reference, but not to give up that, this, when you also change your thoughts and you say, I'm throwing out what's wrong, that gives you extra power, the power of belief, right? But the scientific portion is valid on its own, right?
That's a very good insight, Ankur, because for a lot of people, yeah, affirmations don't work. And then we question, like, why is it not working for me? Because there is so much in the mind that we really need to shift our cognition and shift our attention and energy. Only then it will start working.
Yeah. So that is the temporary fix. It works. Other temporary fixes are that some people are very bodily driven, right? And they feel angry or active, too angry or too active, and they are not able to stop and take this pause, right? And then suddenly they are shocked, right? So another way could be if you could do 5 jerk breaths, right? 5 jerk breaths. So what you need to do if you feel overwhelmed is you need to stop your left nostril like this. Just put a finger, and on your right nostril, just jerk breathe 5 times. Just 5 times. Even this can suddenly break that cycle, right? But these are all temporary fixes. For a more lasting fix, for those of you who are familiar with CAS, just keep taking your CAS test. The CAS will tell you how prone you are to the emotional and cognitive load shifting, right? When you are in high emotional zones of CAS, you're more prone to overwhelm. When you are in high cognitive zones, your attention is, as it is, better managed. Yeah. So the speed at which you start making a new mental map, when you come across such a situation, your natural response is curiosity, right? You're naturally moved to how to make the new mental map, even if you're shocked. So because your analysis and goal mind become active, that time you will, with a high CAS, you are not likely to get overwhelmed. Yeah, there's somebody raising a hand. Smita, hi.
Yeah, hi, Ankur. So my question is, you gave a very scientific reason that when you hold your breath, maybe to a count to three, your whatever you were frozen physiologically, that gets released. So it's very believable and understandable. I also wanted to understand the scientific reason of closing your left nostril. What happens, and giving jerks to your right nostril? What happens?
So the jerk also releases the
Mhm.
same thing. See, overwhelm happens because of the mental freezing, right?
Yeah.
The mind freezing. Now, there is a very developed Nadi Shastra and Swar Shastra in yoga,
Mm.
in Hatha Yoga. They give you different techniques, and they also tell you that the left nostril and the right nostril, they are connected with different nerves and capillary systems of the body, right?
Yeah.
So by blocking your left nostril, the nervous and the capillary system that you are not affecting is the one that is freezing you,
Mhm.
right? So that also would bring immediate result.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So back to that. So the second and the medium term solution that is that monitor your CAS. All of you know it's free to monitor. Once you monitor your CAS, you keep a track of your CAS. You already know how prone you are to you know, getting overwhelmed or the possibility of overwhelm. So before we end, I'll request Saima to share that with all of you. The chart, those of from Mind Mastery already know. For others, they can see how it works. And the
Yeah,
third thing, the
go ahead.
third and the final long-term solution is, not if you don't want to be overwhelmed by anything ever, then we recommend that you learn Paravidya, which is what Mind Mastery says. So what happens is that you learn about the fundamental systems of life, system of mind, system of attention, and system of thinking. Once you've learned these 4 systems, you then nothing falls outside the realm of systemic response. Now you know the system of change. And once you know the system of change, You cannot be faced with anything that is outside. It may take you a little while to calibrate and come out, but you won't be frozen because you know the underlying system. You know how to. So you will never look at it like this. You will never look at, oh, is it my relationship? What do I do? We cannot control what others do. It is my finances, is my career. We can't control what others do, what corporations do, what governments do. But once you've learned the system of thinking, system of mind, system of attention, and system of life, you know how to control response, right? And that will ensure that in your life you are never stopped, right? So these, according to me, are solutions. The rest, we are all learners. We are all learning, hoping to come up with better answers with the help of each other and the world outside. So, Saima, why don't you share the cast thing with them?
Yes, thank you, Ankur, for these insights. Also, I have posted a link in the chat, which is about the Ceekr, about the test. For those who are outside the community, they can, keep that link, copy and paste it. And even you can use that test, take the test for yourself. And let me just share a screen for your understanding that how would, whatever your score would be, what would that mean in terms of overwhelm? When you will take the test, there will be a audio recording uh, which will explain you what the result is. But from the perspective of overwhelm, let me make you understand that so CAS is the cognition attention score, which Ankur has been mentioning quite a number of times here. When you will take the test, there will be a score. So what that means is there'll be a band from varying from pink to higher to green. Now, what that would mean is lower the score. So that means if you're in the pink band or the mustard yellows, so the lower your score would be, that means there is more dependency of yours to the external stimuli, to the outside circumstances. You're much more dependent on, what's what's going on outside of you. And that means you will be spending more attention and energy on your emotions. So more that score, that means lesser on the band, you're more dependent on external stimuli, more overwhelming situations you will experience. The higher the score, that means you are less dependent on the external, that there's more dependency on your own self, on your responses. You're more dependent on your own responses. You have more control, you have more attention. There's increase in your attention and even cognition. Lesser would be your overwhelming situations. So if at all, once you take the test, if you find yourself falling in the pink band, that means your overwhelm situations and responses would be higher and quite frequent. If you find yourself in the mustard yellow band, you will again find there'll be high chances of you being overwhelmed, but the frequency would be lesser than in the pink band. So these are all the mindsets. Which mind are you falling into? Where your attention and energy is going. So your response to overwhelm would be higher. If you're in the lighter blue, and if you find yourself in the scores of 55, your overwhelm will be to limited topics. You won't be overwhelmed frequently or very easily, but for certain topics which are beyond your control, or you may not have an understanding of those, how to deal with those, then there would be overwhelm. The higher blue would be maximum one or two issues that you've not been able to find a solution to. But if you're on the green band or the higher zones, that means you find yourself in the overwhelmed situations, you know the solutions, you are goal based, or even if you do get experience, it would be very, very short lived. So that's how it would look like for you. So check for yourself, keep a track on your scores. You have the link. You can take the test every 45 days. It's free of cost. Um, And so, that would be the probability of overwhelm. So you can keep a check on yourself. And you have the quick fixes, you have the temporary fixes, you have the permanent long-term fixes. And one of the fixes is that you can join us for the courses. All right, I'll stop sharing here. And if anybody has any questions, any insights, anything
I
more
have
to
a
add
question.
to?
Yeah, I have a question, Saima and Ankur. The lower the energy and energy and attention, energy, and the higher the problem solving part in CAS. Uh, we normally say that energy is something that drives everything, right? So a low energy, how would it actually help an individual drive his goals?
No, so attention is also a form of energy, like energy is a form of attention. So, well, we are not saying you are low energy. We're saying within the attention energy mix, you have the requisite attentiveness, right? You are giving enough attention to cognition. So your energy is getting utilized in that. So Sandeep ji, for instance, you take an example that when you decide to run, right? That's a cognitive decision, right? You take a decision, you are going to run. When you run at a certain speed, you can even talk to people around you, etc. You can even process something. But if you start running beyond a point which you are not in your control, one, you are at risk of falling. Second, now all your energy has to maintain for your breath and everything, right? You can't make mental calculations. You can't think up of a situation, right? So your balance shifts from cognitive processing to, just staying on course, keeping yourself safe and being able to do that. Right? You've experienced that, right? If you try to sprint and all,
Got your point.
right? So it's a continuum.
Basically, we've heard it and said it a lot of times that wherever attention flows, energy flows. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. So if our attention and energy is flowing towards a cognition, then we are much in control of our own thoughts. So basically, I think the energy is spoken from that perspective.
Thank you.
Rather than
Clear.
your attention and energy flowing into your emotions.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks. So is there any other questions or anybody would like to share anything? Otherwise,
Well, you guys been great. Thank you for the lovely audience. Thank you for the lovely active engagement. Your attention and energy was totally here. I didn't see any overwhelming experiences here. That was amazing.
Thank you.
And let's keep seeing on. So these sessions will be conducted, which will be open for all first Monday of every month.